So yeah, I had sent you a couple of, like, a bit of the context and some of the questions in the email, but you know, as you know, because you've worked with us throughout the years and have a bit of a sense of the gallery and what we've been doing, and also you've worked with so many different institutions, so you've had a sense of how artists are being engaged with by other institutions and how works are coming into collections. And like I had mentioned, our collection was really built primarily on donations. So what we're trying to address now is really the relationships with artists and really our responsibility in how we're building a collection and how we're presenting and caring for that collection. Like, what's the context we're creating for it? So, you know, I guess one of the first questions I was just thinking about is how can institutions be a resource to artists in more meaningful ways? Like, from your experience, how can that relationship maybe be improved?
How can that relationship be improved? I don't really, currently, I don't really, you know, I can frame it from my experiences in Victoria, and then, you know, some of it's, you know, open space or National Gallery of Canada. I think, I mean, for myself as an Indigenous person, I can see that, you know, having my voice be heard as I would articulate it is really, you know, vital. And, you know, because I think sometimes in the contemporary commercial market for Northwest Coast art, I think sometimes it's not really truly their voice. You know, I think it's, you know, whoever's happened to, you know, write the book at that time has sort of paraphrased what they said. And so, I mean, I think I might be in a better position in the sense that I can articulate what my works mean or write about what my works mean. And, but, you know, it does make so much more of a difference when the artist can actually have their artist statement or have their, you know, doing, you know, like a panel or interview. And that brings so much more insight into the work. So that's the only thing that I could really think of. I mean, a lot of that's basically covered as I've, you know, experienced it. But that's really important, is that the voice of the actual artist is heard and not paraphrased, and that as an artist, I'm able to speak for myself and to articulate what my work means, and, you know, to be able to translate the concepts of, you know, what's in my work to a broader audience. I think that would be, you know, in my view, that's probably what I would consider. But, you know, I'd say a lot of that is being done already anyway. But, you know, but more emphasis on that kind of approach to an artist's works.
Yeah, and language is such a big part of some of your works too, right? Your play on words, and so that's always been kind of connected to your work. So yeah, in that instance too, it's even more important that there are words there that exist already that you've created. So you know, respecting that context that you've shaped and that you've shared with people about the work already, right? To make sure that the integrity of that is contained. Because one of the issues we have is that a lot of the artist statements that would have gone with the prints aren't with them in our collection anymore. So that connection, like the artist's statement, that record is missing with a lot of the works we have. So, you know, for us, I think that's a real loss in terms of the context that we can create for the work. So yeah, I think that's a really important point. If you can connect with the artist, really making sure that you're just creating a way for their voice to be put forward, right? Instead of kind of superimposing other ideas onto them.
Yeah, it's sort of a balancing act, because I found at times that the audience can bring the meaning, the curator can bring the meaning, and the gallery can bring some meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And in some of my works, I found that I've clearly articulated what I intended with the work, and then there are times when a person will view it and they'll bring their interpretation. I'll think, wow, that's really a really valid interpretation, because that's something that I did have in my head when I was creating it, but it's just some of it is really subconscious, some of it's not really directly like exactly what I was intending to do. And then the same thing with a curator or somebody that's writing a bit about an artist's work, that that interpretation will be brought to the work as well, which I think is, it's I'm open to that as an artist. Sometimes I have things that I've articulated in my work which were really like dead serious, and then somebody interprets it as like humorous and they laugh about it, and I think, wow, that's valid to me. I mean, I find I enjoy that, that, I guess just because that's the complexity that I can have something that's really totally serious, and that somebody will laugh about it, and then I can laugh about it as well. So it's
right.
It's all, some of it is the people bringing meaning to the work as well that an artist may, and I think that's a part of the process too, that the artist, it's that balancing act that the artist will definitely have something that they intend to create with the work, but then they'll express, and then at the same time that there are meanings that go beyond that as well.
Yeah, it's really a conversation, right? I mean, I think when we worked on the Form is Meaning exhibition, for me, it would be interested to hear, in hindsight, what your experience was like for that. But sitting in a room with four Indigenous curators, looking through the collection and responding to the works and creating a context, because you each had your own section in that exhibition of works that you would pull together, and kind of different ideas of how you were framing each section. And I thought that was just such an amazing experience to see the works from so many different perspectives. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think it was valuable. I mean, definitely when it came to the other co-curators of that exhibition, that I felt like that they brought a different thing to the table than I would have brought if it was just myself. So it's really, great to be able to harness those other perspectives and to hear it. And, it helped me to see things a little bit differently in that sense. So that, I think that was valuable for that. And really enjoying that process of working on that exhibition.
And just seeing the connections too, because one of the things, as I was talking to Kelly Cannell about which works she would like to see in the collection, she asked if she could see what our collection looked like, right? So getting a sense of what context what context her works would be coming into as well. So seeing, how they would sit in relation to all of the other works that were in there. So, as we talk to artists, this is another piece of it, is what are all the different stories that are going to be told in our collection? And I think, it's interesting. That's why I'm excited about the idea of acquiring some more recent works from you, because I think some of the works we have are from quite early on, back when the Transporters exhibition happened. And then we've acquired a few works over the years. So in terms of the story that your works tell in our collection too, kind of seeing the evolution of your work and your practice and your ideas, what things have been a constant, and like what things have shifted, and what do you feel for you has there been any like major shifts for you in your work over the years, or do you feel like you've had a fairly consistent approach?
Yeah, I'd say things have definitely changed for me over the years. That I began my career with the intention of perpetuating co-Salish art, but also to express my own vision that was really contemporary and true to my reality of growing up in Seattle. And it was always my intention to create something that was different, and that was part of my dream when I was younger, was to create something to follow in the footsteps of my grandfather, who really encouraged me to become an artist and then to do something different. So, I've really followed, I've gone from the perspective of Robert Davidson, that you can't innovate from nothing, that you have to be able to master the art tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I was an undergraduate student and, beginning to study co-Salish art, that was, the first stage of my career was, being able to say, okay, well, you have to be able to understand it to innovate from it. So, and then, I began my career sort of that balancing of perpetuating tradition, but also expressing something that was, really different and iconoclastic in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then, little by little, I think I was really fortunate that I was able to work within an art tradition. That's a balancing act that I've been thinking about the past couple of days, is where I'm working with an art tradition, and you're working with an art tradition. One of the intentions is to perpetuate tradition and culture.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that act of, recreating things from the past, but also at the same time reflecting on our contemporary cultural reality. And, I think Urban Thunderbirds was one of those steps in that mediational middle ground, where I was thinking, okay, well, I can work within this traditional art style,
Mm-hmm.
but express things about the contemporary world and have it be relevant to me as a contemporary co-Salish person and anybody else that might appreciate Indigenous or co-Salish art. And, I continued doing that. And then, I think that Urban Thunderbirds was definitely another pivotal point too, that where I felt like that's another step in getting my confidence to say, okay, well, I'm working within this traditional art style, but expressing things that a lot of people can relate to and reflecting it back into my cultural reality. And I think this pandemic has sort of forced me into that position as well, that, we're in this reality that's really scary. And one of the things that I felt like I've had to do was to pivot, within our reality and to adapt to different things. And, just it's spontaneous ideas. Like I have this crazy idea that, like, what if there's famine in the world, and this pandemic causes famine, and, the world starts to collapse and whatever, and then I have to start farming and whatever. And I spent some time blackberry picking over the summer, and then it just creates a spontaneous idea of like taking the blackberry juice and then creating a painting based on that blackberry juice, of reflecting on, contemporary food practices and traditional food practices. So, I like I said, it was really phasing to my confidence as an artist. I was thinking about like what's going to happen to my career, what's going to happen to the art world, and as an Indigenous person, what's going to happen to me as a person. Like I always feel like, okay, well, I've seen it happen. Like I've seen some of the Canadian culture in some ways reverting back to things in the past. Like I've been thinking about, I want my daughter to grow up in a world that's, a better world than what I grew up in. But then we look at what's happening now as a result of the pandemic and the racism in Duncan.
Yeah.
And then just the economic inequalities that are, beginning to surface in the world as a result of the pandemic. More people unemployed and some people starving, and then, billionaires in the world becoming richer. Is like, wow, just like things are just becoming worse in a lot of ways. And that's, I think that's just sort of a realistic perspective, but also I'm trying to be optimistic at the same time of, that, we still have all the things that have been happening that are positive in the world. So I haven't carved much, and I never really wanted to carve out of market expectation. It was always because I want to carve because that's what I want to do. And that's how I've always approached my career, is that I want to do things because I want to do it, and that I have a conviction that it's something that should be done.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because a market will say this is a hot commodity right now and you should be carving or make. I mean, that's not to criticize anybody that's doing that kind of thing. It's just, I don't want to succumb to that approach to my art practice. So early on in the pandemic, I grabbed some wood and, carving knives and began carving. And I really enjoyed the process. Like I just enjoyed being able to, focus on the medium and not really focus on the reality that was all around me.
Right.
And I actually found it to be meditative. It was nice in that sense, because I also like, when you're carving, it's such a mindless activity, but in actuality, I was just so focused on what I was doing. It was almost like when I was doing landscaping when I was a younger person. Landscaping is not a very intellectual activity, but at the same time, I was able to, when I was doing that, I was able to read and able to think about things that I read while I was landscaping or reading or whatever. And that's almost the same thing with carving, that I found that I can really focus on what I'm thinking at that time. So I found myself trying to pivot. I'm a bit more old school as far as some things go. I was, before this pandemic, I was probably like more of a cash person. I dealt with cash. I never really dealt with debit. Whatever. I've been forced to adjust to say, okay, well, I'm going to use. I'm using debit now, and I'm more open to the thought of getting a website.
Right.
And things that I didn't do before. So I'm trying to pivot to the reality that we're in right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where this pandemic has brought me, and I'm just happy that I'm able to like continue coasting at this point. It's like, wow, it was always my dream to be an artist, and that it was such a sad thought when this pandemic first began to happen. I was thinking, wow, maybe this is the end of my childhood dream, and I'll have to give it up, and I don't know where I'll go, like what I'm going to do, what I do after that, because I haven't done anything else with my life really. So it is the pressure. I mean, that's the pressure that I really want to document this, the history that's happening right now.
Right. Yeah.
Do it from a co-Salish perspective. So I think that, I mean, I couldn't see approaching my practice in any other way at this point. That just the pressure of what's happening in the world, and also inspiration to create works that are relevant to what's happening. So it's, but yeah, when I began my career, I was really thinking that I would like to become known, totally for co-Salish graphic works, for painting on canvas. And I just felt like, well, like, why wouldn't that be accepted by the market? Like, why does the market always expect for me to carve or to make jewelry or these other mediums that are really associated with Northwest Coast art? And then over time, I began to redefine to say, okay, well, I can also write and write things that are related to my career. So one thing that I found too is that over time, over the past decade, I found that I still really enjoy doing graphic works, but I can only do paint for so long before I don't really have as much of a feeling for the process. So that that's the nice thing about being able to do other media, working with media like carving. That really felt natural. And going back to my childhood, back to when I was 6 years old, and having that dream of carving and being an artist. So it's something that but yeah, I think it's really added that pressure, and I'm just really happy to be able to create these works, relating to what's happening right now in the world.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're in that position, because I think there's so much value. Like, I feel so much gratitude towards artists right now, because they have this amazing way of processing our reality, our understanding of things, and presenting them back to us in ways that help us see what we might not see otherwise, or propose ideas that we might not even think of because they seem too far-fetched. When you think about, as you're describing, like, feeling overwhelmed by things, but also feeling optimism and having space to try things, and like carving, where it allows you time to process things. So yeah, I think it's so important to support artists so that there is that conversation happening and that work being created that allows us perspective what's happening. And when you were mentioning the Urban Thunderbirds exhibition, like, so that was like 7 years ago now, which seems crazy. And, you know, I was thinking about your relationship with Dylan Thomas during that project, and, you know, that the relationship you had in that process was kind of like a mentorship. And then recently Dylan Thomas was mentoring Margaret August, and both of them, you know, look up to your practice as well. So it's like that continuum, you know, seeing that in the generations of artists. And like, are we the older generation now? I wonder. The young ones are coming up.
Yeah.
But you know, so it's just, you know, thinking about that conversation too, of, you know, the works that we'll have in our collection and the story that we'll tell just between the relationships of the artists, and how you might be able to start seeing those, you know, those influences through the newer generations and emerging folks. So yeah, I think that's really exciting. So well, thank you for sharing so much about your practice and your thoughts about these things. And is there anything else that we didn't cover that you might want to share, or you think you got it all out?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
It's I'm just excited to be able to, you know, begin working on these works now. Like I said, it was just the reality being, you know, phased by the pandemic, and then adapting to it, and then, you know, having my family staying at home for quite a while.
Yeah.
That was a really bittersweet experience, because, you know, at first it's like, wow, I really have to adjust to this, and, you know, to try to work within this environment where my, you know, Amanda's home and Cadence is home, and
Yeah.
and then, you know, when they actually did, you know, go back to, you know, daycare and to the work and whatever, it just felt like, wow, it was just really bittersweet, because it's like, wow, now I gotta, you know, adjust back to being in this position where I gotta work on my own schedule. And like, you know, I've been trying my best right now to go within different spaces. Like I said, I've been basically just staying at home and
Right.
on the yard, and once in a while I'll go out somewhere, like for a walk or whatever. But I'm just a high precaution person, so I,
Yeah.
you know, I just try to do my best to stay home. But yeah, it definitely has been. I mean, I think it's really important to document it. I mean, as a co-Salish person, you know, because the ramifications for our culture could be really devastating. And that's just a possibility, a theoretical possibility. I mean, unfortunately, you know, all of the horrible things that could have happened haven't transpired yet, but we're not really through it yet. So it's like, well, I just, you know, we're in the second wave. So it's like, I think it's really pivotal and important to document this time in history, because this is not something that happens often. You know, the last time was over a century ago. And you know, I think about the artists of the past, you know, like I look at, you know, the Great Depression and that era of Northwest Coast art. And I was, you know, thinking like, wow, how did they, you know, continue to produce art within that time period?
Yeah.
And, you know, I was taking some encouragement from other artists for myself to say, well, you know, I can still continue to, you know, create art. And that's the good thing about it too, is that it's something where it can help me get away from the reality temporarily. I mean, it sounds sort of contradicting in some ways, that I'm reflecting on this reality, but also able to escape from it through my work. So I really enjoy that. I mean, I enjoy that I can, you know, create my work and have it be something where it reflects on this reality, but it's also something that takes me away from this reality for a period of time. So it's something I really feel fortunate in that sense. I mean, it's really, you know, a lot of people that are self-employed are fortunate in the sense that they can continue working. And, you know, I feel bad for all the people out there in the world that their job relies on, you know, going to a workplace.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just feel fortunate in the sense that I'm an artist, that, you know, I don't have to go to a workplace, that I can work from home or work from, you know, whatever environment that I want to work in. And I feel, you know, privileged in that sense, in those two senses, that I can work at home and then I can escape from this reality, but at the same time I can also reflect on this reality. So it's really important and very, very pivotal to document it, because I'm sure that there will be other works. I mean, I haven't really seen a lot lately, relating to the pandemic, but I'm sure that there are works that are being produced that are relating to this reality, but something I really feel like I can do, just because I've had that experience of art production, but also articulation and art statements and writing that goes along with that.
Yeah, and it's so important to have, like you said, those times that are like a break from it, because we need room to process what we're experiencing. If we're always in that intense place all the time, it's exhausting, right? And that doesn't help feed your creative process. So I'm glad that you have those moments, and that can be part of how you're working right now. Yeah. That's great.